All right, I think we're recording. Hey, folks, it's the irresponsible reader, H.C. Newton, finally back with this increasingly occasional series of chats with authors or whoever. Today, we got a really cool one coming up. I assume. I don't know. We haven't recorded yet, so maybe it's going to be dull. Probably not, though. Oh yeah, I was just gonna remind you all as I'm demonstrating. No second takes, no editing, no nothing. It's just I hit record. I don't want to put in the effort because it would end up. I would put out one of these a year by the time I got done fiddling around with it to make it look good. So I'm not even going to bother to try. Hopefully, our guest is going to be interesting enough that you're not going to care. So without further ado, let's welcome to the chat Glen Gabel. Hi, Glenn.
Hi.
All
Hello.
right. You made it. Good.
Yes.
I was a little afraid that click was going to kick you out.
I'm here,
right.
man. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Good. So let's start with, I will link down in the show notes to the original chat you and I did on text. But why don't you introduce yourself for people who don't want to read, and then tell us a little bit about Meg Ashley.
Sure. My name's Glen Gabel. I'm an author. I'm a screenwriter. Moved to Idaho in 2020 during the craziness of the pandemic. I think Game of Thrones said chaos is a ladder, and we definitely decided Idaho was our real home. So excited to be here the last 5 years with my wife. I published a novel a couple of years ago called The Soothsayer, which is a YA kind of Christian fantasy book. Oh, there you got it right there. There it is. And it's kind of along the lines of let me think. The Talisman meets Narnia. That'd be the best two connections I've had. I've had reviewers say it's very reminiscent of Stephen King's The Talisman, but people say it's got some Christian themes in there, reminiscent of Narnia. And that did pretty well, and enjoyed that, and working on a new book which is actually going to be out this spring, which is a supernatural crime thriller, a little bit different, called Manitou. It'll be out, I think, April. They just finished the copy edit, and I'm going through the manuscript, doing all the things that you must do when the copy edit gets polished. So, but April is what it sounds like it'll be. But the reason I am here today with the wonderful H.C. Newton is to actually talk about another author, Meg Ashley, who was my mother and inspired me to write my whole life. And her final novel, Through the Corner of Circles. And it's kind of a mythic hero's quest type story. It's pretty interesting. I thought HC was nice enough to let me bring me on today to talk about it.
Okay. So, all right. At what point in your life, or what point in her life, did she start publishing? And by the way, can I refer to her as Meg, or is that a little bit weird for you to her?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. That was her pen name. That's totally fine. Yep.
So, yeah. So at what point in time did Meg start publishing?
Meg started publishing, I want to say, in the early 80s. Her first book was actually an autobiography that was picked up by Tyndale House called Meg, kind of chronicling her life story. I have a very interesting family. My mom, I have three siblings, and we all have different fathers. And my mom was, a struggling author in the 70s and the 80s, and basically wound up having children and did not have the means to support them. And it chronicles her struggles with, her faith, and also, do I keep these children? Do I give them up? Do I, abort, and she wound up giving them up for adoption, thankfully, because I have now two brothers that I'm really blessed to have gotten to know. But it kind of chronicles those choices and her life. It's a really kind of an interesting story, and how she kind of came to her faith, and and just kind of what it really means to kind of sacrificing self for the betterment of someone else. And that was picked up by Tyndale House, and she was featured on the 700 Club. She went on from there to work at Worldwide Pictures under Billy Graham, Morris Cirillo, and she worked with Corrie ten Boom. Corrie ten Boom's book, The Hiding Place, I think is the most well-known about her time at internment camp. But she actually worked with Corrie, working on some screenplays. She wrote an unproduced episode of Little House on the Prairie, never got made, but it was a Christmas special. I guess she said the reason it got picked up by the network, but then they realized because it required a snowstorm, they didn't have enough money for it, so it never got produced. And I was like, that would have been so cool to like see something, my mom wrote on Little House on the Prairie, but it never got actually produced. But yeah, she did that. And then she wound up publishing 4 other novels, children's novels that were kind of mystery novels called the Boarding House series, starting with The Secret at the Old House, Lights in the Lake, The Deserted Room, and then Danger on the Quarry Path. And all of those were also published by Tyndale House. So that was her publishing career in the 80s. And then for the next 30 years, she raised us. So she writing sort of took a back seat. But through that whole time, I was witness to the evolution of Through the Corner of Circles, which is very different from anything else she had ever written previously. It
looks like it. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess if I would have to pitch it, I'd say it's this post-apocalyptic mythic hero's journey about Tate, who is an orphan raised by a Lakota tribe that's slowly dying from what could be called a loss of hope. And during a vision quest, Tate's transported to a parallel world where a once trusted shaman has become something of a tyrant. And he's enslaving his own people to gain power. And after being enslaved herself, Tate actually rises as this unlikely messianic figure who helps lead a revolt that could free the people of that world and give some hope to her own. So that's kind of where that story lands.
Okay. So
yeah, it's a lot.
From the bullet points that we were going to talk about, I think you just covered like 4 of them. So, okay.
Quick, man.
Yeah. So, did you get the writing bug from her, or, and you've got at least one sibling who's a writer. Did you pick it up that way? Is it genetics, or it just happened?
I don't know where. I mean, so, I'm a child of the 80s. So, it's weird. It's like, I feel like the 80s was this magical time where like really good storytelling happened. We had like Indiana Jones and like the Goonies and even the cartoons had a lot of depth to them. And it was a lot of fun. And there was just a lot of, I guess, excitement, and I mean, the books that came out during that time too, they were just great. And, I don't know if mom ever purposely said, you should write, but she never discouraged it. And she had this old electric typewriter in her office, and, I would get on it and, plunk away these kind of really lame stories, as a kid. And she was always just very encouraging about it. So yeah, I did that for, a while. And then years later, I went to USC film school and got into screenwriting a lot and did that for a while, still do it. And I think it was maybe in 2017, my wife was reading a YA fantasy series, ebook series with like 13 or 14 books. I don't even remember who the author was, but it was someone that like put out a book every 3 months or some ridiculous thing. And And I've read some fantasy and whatever. I wouldn't say fantasy is like my number one genre that I enjoy reading, but I enjoy it. And she handed me this book and she's like, "Oh, you might like this." And I read 20 pages of the first chapter and I was like, "Oh God." I was like, I think I could do better than this. Like, I think I could do better than this. And so, and because I wasn't really in the YA fantasy, I thought, I'm just going to, as an exercise, write a little short story in YA fantasy and see what I can come up with. And, 7 years later, that turned into The Soothsayer. So it expanded. So, yeah. So that's kind of been my journey, I guess, from childhood up.
Okay. So, all right. So she's got her autobiography, then the YA mystery series, Little House on the Prairie, that kind of thing. How does she get from that to not one, but two dystopias? Because why settle for one?
Right.
Featuring Lakota spirituality. I mean, there's what's the connection? How does she get from point A to point, I don't know, Z there?
Well, so in between finishing her contract with Tyndale and then, 30 years of us moving around and, having life adventures and stuff, she really got into Native American folklore, really started studying it. And she went to, it was either Chapman or Cal State Fullerton, I forget. She went to both, but she wound up getting a master's in Native American languages and folklore, specifically Lakota. And she actually went and lived on the Rosebud Reservation for about 3 to 4 months. And I think I was a senior in high school when that happened, because I remember she was like, "I'm going to go out to this reservation with the Indians and I'll see you in 3 months. Bye." And I was like, "Whoa, okay."
Sure.
So, and she went out and she spent time there and she learned the stories and she learned a lot of the language and, just spent a lot of time, unpacking the myths that base up their belief system. And I think it really, created in her the bug to tell, a story. And it's funny because I remember even in 1989, when she was first starting a very early draft of Circles, it was a completely different title. I know that. I don't remember the title, but it was very different. And it was about a boy instead of a young woman. And there were parts of the story there, but it wasn't really fleshed out,
Mm-hmm.
And slowly over the years, she kind of pieced it together and formulated this thing. And but it was kind of like just something that she was really interested in reading and studying, and then went on to kind of incorporate it into her writing. So.
Okay. So all right, real quick. Something I wanted to mention earlier, but I can't. I'm not a math guy.
Sure.
At all. Can you explain how the geometry of the title works? Because corners and circles and going through them.
Yeah. You picked up on that. Where does the
title come from?
Okay. So, and it's supposed to be, an oxymoron. It's supposed to.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Early on, an early version of the story taking place in this post-apocalyptic world. America is essentially destroyed.
Right.
And there's kind of this nuclear winter that is hit. And people are just dying out by the hundreds of thousands. And you really don't go outside. Like, it's just cold and terrible and miserable and all these things. And Tate and comes across an old building that's kind of formulates kind of circles, kind of like the Olympic rings, they're round buildings, but there's a flaw in the architecture. And while she's on this vision quest, and I think there's parts of this in the published version, while she's on this vision quest, she has to seek shelter from a storm. And sees that there's kind of a corner within the rounded circular building and goes into it to kind of get shelter from the storm. And within that, a portal sort of opens that leads her to the other world. So, interestingly enough, she got the idea when I was, and I found this out much later, when we were living in Colorado, in Greeley, Colorado. The school I went to, I think it was called Scott Middle School. I think that was the name of it, but it has these rounded buildings, and and I think that's where she got it from, because it has a very interesting look. It's just like a bunch of globbed up circular buildings all sort of in a circle around each other. So I think that's kind of where she got it from. But yeah, that's
okay.
where that comes from.
Okay. Yeah. So you said took about 30 years for
roughly. Yeah.
This to write roughly. Yeah. No, let's nail it down. How many days?
Yeah. A long time.
Okay. So, how much of this did you get to see along the line? How much do you know while she was chipping away and reforming and all this other stuff? Like, how were you just a spectator? Did she like bounce stuff off you? Did you read early drafts?
I read early drafts of it. I read a very early draft of it. I want to say in 2000. And then she self-published it. I want to say 2010, but it wasn't really to her liking. Like, there was something that still needed a little bit more work. And so she wound up pulling it and kind of reworking it again. And then at one point, she and I were sort of tossing around the idea of what it would look like as a screenplay. And so I reread it and really started adapting it into a screenplay we never completed it. It was just kind of on a whim thing. But yeah, so I read it roughly 3 times. Okay. So yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So Tate changes from a boy to a young woman.
No, she's a young woman all the way through. The early version of the book,
the primary character was a boy.
Yeah, the primary was a boy, but
yeah,
Meg changed that into just a young woman. So
okay. So I mean, so not just the way you stress that so much wasn't just like totally different protagonist, totally different beginning to the story. Is that what I'm guessing?
Yeah, I think she was trying to figure out who her protagonist was.
Sure.
And I that's really hard. As an author, I know, like, for me, it's like sometimes the plot is a lot more fun to jump into, but the thing is I feel like most plots have been done a billion times. So what really differentiates, I was telling, I teach screenwriting here locally in the Treasure Valley, but one thing I tell my students is that, there's been 100 million zombie movies, right? And they're all basically the same thing, people running from zombies. So how do you differentiate a good zombie movie from the bad one? It's the characters.
Sure.
It's really who they are, what they want, how do they change, how do they not change? That's what separates it. And I think when my mom was initially working with it with a male protagonist, she didn't really know the character that well. And then she sort of scrapped that and went back to the drawing board and went with a female protagonist, which I think works a lot better.
Yeah.
And yeah, so.
Yeah. I mean, I can just imagine, who knows how many, words into a story and you're like, this is the wrong guy.
Right.
I've got the wrong character for this. And
yeah,
I mean, how much reworking do you have to do? I mean, that's not taking Eric Stoltz out and putting Michael J. Fox in. This is bigger, Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was traumatic enough.
If you read the novel, it actually works really well because her origins are tied into who she becomes.
Sure.
By the end of the novel, and it's really cool. So
yeah. No, I'm trying to stay present, so I haven't thought too much, but a little bit in the back of my head is like, how does this work? you know, with the guy in his 20s, and it doesn't.
Yeah. And that's why I think Meg really changed the character and said, you know what, let's start over with the protagonist, and
this can't go that direction.
Right.
Well, I mean, it probably could have, but it wouldn't end up anything like
it would have been a different
what
story.
we got. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So for you, when you read it, when you think about it, when you're hand selling it, which you did very effectively, what themes, what ideas, what about it stands out to you? Is like, this is something, you're not just out there pushing it as a tribute to Meg. You're out there because there's something about this that strikes you. What kind of ideas, what should readers look for or expect in this book?
Well, I mean, I think it sort of stands apart from other fantasy novels. Is, obviously the world building, it's much more based in Native American folklore,
right?
And spirituality, and it's not about spells and spectacle.
Right.
It's about hope and belief. And I think it sort of speaks to universal fears, and, what happens when hope dies, and what does it take to restore it? And so I think it kind of digs at a deeper level. It uses some of the tropes of fantasy, dark fantasy and stuff. You've got, creatures and death and, forms of magic and all that. But it's not, it's not specifically about that. It's much more about, how do we deal with failure? How do we deal with life? How do we deal with, unwinnable circumstances? And when do we live, when do we find our hope? So, yeah.
And there's an element to Tate of the chosen one who, by gum, doesn't want to be chosen. And
very much unwilling.
Yeah. Refuses it. And also a lot of other people doubt that she is the chosen one. But which is nice, I was just writing a little something recently about chosen one ideas, and it's been a while since I ran into one, and here we got one that's kicking and screaming like, no, not me, which is kind of cool. But it doesn't play out like your stereotypical chosen one does. And one thing I've thought about, I don't even know where I was going with that, but I'm sure. Yeah. Anyway, another thing about this that I've been chewing on a little bit is the relationship between her adventures in the spirit quest and how it relates to the real world, which frankly doesn't seem as real as the Vision Quest world.
Right.
Probably, intentional. I don't think that's like, oh, she could have done better there. I think the Vision world means more to Tate.
Agada, yeah.
And so she's also, there's kind of an implication that she's the chosen one for Earth too, or at least for the group that she's living with that brought her up. And that's probably where the Vision Quest, why she gets that quest, is to help her.
Right.
But we don't get to see much. We're told that but we don't get to see much of how it affects this world. And I don't know. I can't say where was she going with that, because what do you know? But what about that idea? Bounce off that idea. We'll talk about it. What, do you have any thoughts
I think,
on that?
Yeah, it's our world where it starts. It's kind of, obviously it's a world where everything's gone wrong and people have really lost the will to survive, and it's the staging point. It's the staging point for Agada, where she winds up going. And I think what's really interesting is that the locations that Tate comes across, maples and ivy and roses, they're all kind of metaphors for institutions and beliefs that are sort of present in our real world today, if you're looking at it in a certain way. Like ivy is very much academia, but the cold academia that values intellect above life, and roses is kind of this hedonistic place where there is no such thing as innocence, and it's served up on the altar of self-gratification. And maples is very much a this socialistic kind of work camp that only it's kind of like the idea that the government knows what's best for you, and buckle down, and so there's ideas in the fantasy world and things that I think draw parallel to what we deal with here today. So even though we don't see a lot of the real world, she comes back to the real world. I don't want to spoil it, but obviously like the real world does come back into the picture at the end. But it's the primary setting is Agada is the fantasy world, and that's the way I choose to look at it. Meg, my mom, might have had some other thoughts on it, but that's kind of the way I've always perceived it. So
I got a very much that hideous strength vibe off of, especially I don't know, last third or so, or the events leading up to the climactic battle scenes. There was
on the mountain and stuff.
A real whatever that institute was in that hideous strength. I should know the name of it, but I don't. But that it felt like similar kind of things, that Meg and Lewis were going for, and I'm not saying she was ripping off or anything like that, but it felt like it was striking a lot of the same kind of things.
Similar ideas in some ways.
And then
I know my mom was a huge fan of Madeleine L'Engle, so there's there's elements there that I think you can draw parallels to,
that's further back in the memory bank, but sure, let's go with that. And then there's a lot of heady stuff, a lot of spirituality kind of thing. But there are a couple of times when this turns into stabby kind of violence, kind of fantasy book. I mean,
it gets dark in certain spots.
Those battle scenes, some of those were really well done and so far removed from YA mystery, especially a YA mystery that Tyndall would want anything to do with.
Right?
That's kind of, that had to be like kind of a stretch for her to work.
I mean, I don't know. I remember talking to her at times when she was working through writing some of those scenes and stuff, and talking about how it's tough to choreograph action scenes, because it's like you have these epic battles going on, but then you have to kind of close in on specific characters during it without overloading the reader. You know what I mean? It's like you kind of paint the picture of this huge epic battle with people killing each other, but then close in on two characters going at it, and then maybe pull out again and close in again. And it's kind of, I always think of, it's, for me, I think of the movie 300, you think of, you get these big epic, the Persians and Sparta going at it, but then it zooms in and you get, Gerard Butler, stabbing some guy and ducking and whatever. And I think, doing that with words is a little trickier, but and still keeping the pacing. But I think it's kind of necessary at times. I don't know. That's
Sure.
yeah. I think it was a little bit of a stretch for her, but it's something that I think she did pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you bring out something about the choreographing that. Was it S.A. Cosby in his book Blacktop Wasteland? When I hear him talk about that, there's a lot of car chases and a lot of weird driving. And he talks about getting out like Hot Wheels and using that to make sure stuff actually works.
Right.
I almost have to envision for some of these things. She's got she grabbed your action figures. And
she might have.
In a closet.
She might have when I wasn't looking. Right.
Stretching them all out on the floor or something to do that.
Right.
You talked about hope, and finding hope, and there is a lot of lack of hope throughout this book, and she hits that really, really well. I mean, the restoration of it, and those people who don't lose it are also depicted really well. But there are some characters, and Tata herself in particular, where, this is not a happy world at all. This is the dystopia comes through really well, and the way she's able to personalize it into, Tate encounters one girl, that devastates her, and devastates the reader, watching what this one girl goes through, or this one guy and whatnot like that. It is, and I gotta think that you can't manufacture that. She's got to know. She's had to experience something like that. I mean,
she I mean, she had an interesting life, and I think, that not only with her relationships, but she worked with a lot of, authors, a lot of people, and obviously having to give up her children for adoption was a huge heartbreak for her. And, she, towards the end of her life, she had a lot of health issues that she was dealing with too. And, I think we can all, we don't always have to experience specifically what a character goes through to understand the kind of pain that goes along with, abuse, or the kind of pain that goes along with,
I'm not suggesting that she witnessed a girl starve to death.
You're right.
But she had something in her that was able to tap into that experience.
Right. Yeah.
And, so even that kind of like, okay, if someone can experience that intense, that depth, and find hope, even fictionalized hope, that there's something there for the reader to walk away from. It's not fictional hope. There's actual stuff there. There's something to build on. I thought I'm going to keep calling it the Vision World because I'm going to mispronounce it otherwise. There's a weird mix of tech and absence of tech. Nuclear Winter World tech, what's that? That's gone. It got us to where we are. So in this other world, there's this, and a lot of native, at least native based fantasy or that kind of mysticism is like an almost rejection of tech, and back to a romanticized, before the white man showed up kind of existence.
Right. Totem poles and peace pie. Right. Yeah.
This isn't that. This straddles more of a probably, when she was living on Rosebud, a combination of native ideas and ideals with the world that they are stuck in.
Right. I mean, it touches on it briefly in the book, but basically technology was brought into that spirit world.
Yeah.
It was, or Agada. It was brought in by someone else and misused.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of
idea that
why
there's
it's
other worlds
present
too?
there. What's that?
You get the idea that there's other worlds. This isn't just like,
Yeah.
I mean, this is a multiverse.
There are. So she had outlined sequels to this
Oh, really?
book. Yeah.
Okay.
And the next one takes place in I don't know if it really takes place in Agada so much as a parallel kind of,
Mm-hmm.
a multiverse type world. It's different characters, but a couple of connections. And so, yeah, but technology, does come into play, but it's always technology that, how do I put it? It's kind of like in Stephen King's The Dark Tower series where like the world has moved on and like there's remnants
Yeah.
of technology
Right.
that people don't really know how to deal with and some misuse and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I think it's kind of a similar vein in this book is that there's bits of, kind of World War II technology
Yeah.
in this world that have kind of been transported over and either forgotten about or mishandled and that kind of a thing. And,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. Which I enjoyed it once I realized how it was working. First I was like, what is this doing here?
Yeah,
I know.
How did this gun get in here? This isn't fantasy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
it's like I
mean,
said, it doesn't touch on all the like it uses some tropes from the genre, but I really like how she pulled in really different ideas into it and kind of made it all into a cohesive world,
Right. Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah. No, there's nothing here that doesn't work. It's not like there's no vestigial thing like why does what?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it all works. It's not quite to the point where you're like none of these elements should work together. It's not there, but it's border. It borders on that, where the idea that these things shouldn't work together, but they do.
Right.
I've read a couple books last year where these elements should not work, and they absolutely do. She doesn't get to that point. She doesn't get to the point, where there's a spaceship along with a soul dealing demon.
Right. It's nothing too radical. I feel like it's all kind of periphery in the book. It's there and it's mentioned, and I think there's a point. I gotta remember. I think there's a point mid-book where they kind of talk about where the tech sort of came from, but it's very slight. It's not a lot of time is spent on it.
No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's not essential to understanding the themes or the plot or anything like that.
Yeah, it's there. Deal with it. Or just
it was really, I think, as seeds for the next one that was going to come. So that's kind of yeah.
But the fact that the next one never shows, that's fine because it works in this situation. Okay. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you think we should have?
I think we pretty much covered it. It's, I'm going to be, I think that the Treasure Valley Nampa Book Fair thing is coming up. Here in the spring. And I think I'm going to that. I registered, so I don't know. They haven't got back to me yet, but if I am there, I'll definitely have copies, for sale along with my stuff. And, so, it'll be there. And, I'm hoping to also, put out her, children's mystery novels to the boarding house series. I have the rights to all that stuff. So I've been thinking about kind of reworking the covers a little bit and, just offering them up. I know there's a lot of folks shopping for their kids or grandkids with these things. So I might be able to put some of her other work out there too. Hopefully.
Oh, that'd be cool. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so that once again, folks, whoops, get on camera here. Through the Corner of Circles. It's a fantasy like you haven't read before. And you can get this at all your, book buying places of choice. If you're in the Treasure Valley, hunt Glen down, and give it from him. and you'll have a nice chat about it. Also, on camera again, The Soothsayer.
Oh, thank you.
You got to read this. Well, I got to read it too, but it looks really good. I'm getting close.
It's all right, man. You read a lot. No, it's fine.
And then later this year, do we have a title?
Yeah, I'm Manitou.
Manitou.
And it's a supernatural crime thriller, and basically it's about a forestry ranger who's dealing with the death of his wife and child, and he's stationed at a fire tower in the Idaho Bitterroot Wilderness up north. And he's dealing with that. He's kind of ready to take his own life. And while he's stationed up there, witnesses a cartel plane crash. And he's sort of thrust into an investigation where he finds a lot of drugs and a severed limb. And as he slowly uncovers what's going on in a nearby mountain town, he realizes that there's something in the woods that's killing people, and it's not human.
Okay. All righty.
And that's called Manitou. So
okay. Feel good book of the year.
It sounds yes. Like sure. It's a family thing. Yeah. It's great. Okay. No, yeah. So
okay. Well, there you go, folks. You got your marching orders. There'll be links down below. Links down below, and to all this good stuff. And thanks, Glenn. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And we will.
Thank you very much.
All later. And end, I guess.